Yo, welcome back to the Procedural Generation mini-series. Today I'm going to be going over how we can stop the player from exiting the current level while the next one is generating. As it stands right now, we have a working prototype, but you can see that the next one is generating, and so if you end up finding the end space before this one's done, that could be problematic for gameplay reasons, immersion reasons, etc. So what we want to do is we want to make it so that this the ending space, wherever it is blocked off by some sort of gate or wall or some sort of object so that the player can't enter in. We don't have to use a wall. We could just turn off the trigger sensor while the next one is generating, or turn it on when the next one is done. But in order to make it clear to the player, it's probably a good idea to have some sort of visual barrier blocking. One thing we know that we have that signals that a level is being generated is that this trigger zone is detecting something. It's detecting the generator tag in a scene space, and so we could use this type of device on our final square to block it off until it's no longer seeing something. Whether we want to do it on the square object itself or within our create level controller is completely up to personal preference. I don't think it really belongs inside of our create levels chip, so I'm going to go ahead and add it into this object down here. So let's go ahead and build a little prototype wall here. I'm going to copy this sculpt, and we can use this as a wall. I'm going to get rid of the end level block there. And so these will be our temporary walls, and we don't really need to worry about the color because we can make it invisible and do a neat little paint trick instead. So we'll paint something like a fence on here. Okay, so I'm not an artist, so I'm just going to make something very simple. That looks good. I'll just draw a bar here signaling that this is a fence. First of all, I'll merge these two paintings so they're one, and then I will group the wall with the fence painting. If I can select them both, there we go. So now you can see this is one thing here with the fence on it, and inside of here I can go into this and make it invisible but also collidable. And so this can be our little fence object that we use on the sides where we'll be coming from. So this will be here blocking the player and they won't be able to walk through it. One other thing we need to adjust in here is we need to make sure that this doesn't have the scenery label, and for now really it only needs to collide with us, with our puppet. So we can just leave it like that. This way it's collidable, and for now we'll leave it visible so we can see it. Now we want this wall to be able to move up and down and maybe play some sounds when the player is allowed to move in. That way there's some sort of signal letting them know that something's happening, or just something that isn't just all of a sudden this wall disappears. So I'm going to put a microchip down on this cube, and we'll need a couple things here. First I'll get out a timeline, and I'll get out a keyframe. And so what this keyframe is going to do is it's going to, all I did was tap R2 on top of this sculpt, and so that's going to save the position. Now I'll get another keyframe out, and this time I'm going to move the position up like so. And we want to move it high enough so that the player can walk through. So we'll do it like that. And so if I took the first keyframe that we made here, which is where it's just sitting where it should be, and the next keyframe we put somewhere in the timeline and added a blend between the two, we can see that this gate will rise. And we may want to add some sort of sound here, so we can go into the sound mode and look for a nice sound effect. medium molecule has these machines and movements. I think we may want to use some sort of friction loop here. And so with these sound effects, they go through the length of this animation. So if I press play on this, we could see these sound effects also are 3D, so the closer you are, the louder that'll be. So if we went into the group of this and we turn off the visibility, we can see what this will look like now. I'll label this timeline open gate, and we're going to set the playback mode to play once. And now all we have to do is determine when to power this. Now, since there are 2 levels being generated at a time, we don't want to trigger this the second it detects generator. We need to keep a count so that this one will only raise once the count has reached 2. So I'll get a counter out. And I'll use a signal manipulator on a pulse. This will go into the increase count, which I'll set the target to 2, and when it's done, it will play. We also need to use a NOT gate, and we'll plug the detected into that. And so the only time this happens is when our generator deletes itself. So at the beginning, it'll be at 0, and then once this level completes, it'll be at 1. Now if this wall was sitting in here, we don't want this wall to raise until the count goes up to 2. So now if we watch time, we can see that once the first level deletes itself, it increases the counter, and when the second one is done, it will play the timeline on the wall. Now instead of using keyframes, I'm actually going to use a mover, which I will make sure is facing in the upwards positive Y direction. I can turn these things up, and let's make sure that works. Okay, cool. Let's mess with the forward speed a little bit. See how that looks. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay, so I'll leave it like that. Okay, for some reason this mover isn't actually moving the wall. I don't seem to be able to attach. The wire just disappears when I attach it to something. So instead of putting it in the timeline, we'll just move it out into this chip. And when this is done, we will turn that on, and only as long as this is not finished. So I'll get out a NOT gate here, and I'll plug the on-end trigger into the NOT gate, and then I'll get out an AND gate as well. I'll move this mover over here, place both of these into the AND gate, and that will power the mover. So to test that this works, I'll just get out a controller sensor, and I'll set it to remote controllable, and I'll place the X button into this positive signal. So now I'll start time, I'll press X, I'll press it again, and there we go, it lifts the gate. And it never stops it either. So in order to fix this, I'll just get out a keyframe, which will turn the power to the entire chip off. And when this is done, I will turn on the keyframe and keep changes. So now I'll start time. And once it finishes playing, it should stop. This counter, instead of being at 2, should just be at 1, because this generator microchip, or the generator tag that we're looking for, actually gets deleted right when this wall comes up. So really we only need to count to 1, and so that will signal when the next level has been generated. Okay, so to change how this works, we'll go back into our final room object here. I'm going to get rid of the randomizer here, because we definitely don't need that. And the way it works right now is that if it doesn't detect a wall and it doesn't detect a floor in front of it, and we receive the end generation signal, then we want to place a wall at the edge. Now that we're adding a different type of wall, or the gate, we want to emit that gate when there's no wall in front of us and there is a floor in front of us. So it's going to be a different situation than this, because we basically it will look just like this, except this will go into here, and this trigger zone will go straight into the AND gate, and that will trigger a different emitter. I'll just get a little cube out just for the moment. And so that will emit there when there is a floor, and that is essentially where our gate will be. Oh, one thing I forgot, we need to plug the signal from the receiver into this AND gate as well, because we don't want this to trigger early. Let's see how this looks. I'll start time. We can see it puts up our final room, and over here it places that block where the gate should be. And so what's cool about that is that even if the block is open on multiple sides, it'll place the gate on both sides. So now all we have to do is replace this block with our gate. So I'll come back into the microchip here, and instead of using this block, we will just emit the gate object. Okay, with all that done, everything should work the way we expect. We can see a gate is here, and it won't raise until the next one has finished generating. Once it does, the gate raises, and the player could enter the zone. I'm pressing the button, and it won't let me in, but the next level is done generating, and so now we can go into this level, and this one will now raise when the next one's done. So this would be a good way to prevent the player from moving on to the ungenerated level in case they end up reaching the end very soon. You know, especially if this is like some sort of, you know, NetHack dungeon crawler type game. A lot of times the staircases are pretty close to the starting position, but this way the players can't move on until the next level is generated. So I hope this was helpful to you in some way. In the next video, I would like to discuss how we could generate our next level to be right on the other side of this wall right here. So once we get to the end level, once the gate opens, we can come here, and this will lift up this wall in front of us, or this one right here, into the next level. So if this ending point were here, we could generate the next starting point here, here, or here, and so when the player enters and then presses the button, the wall would lift up, and they would be able to, or a door would open, and they'd be able to enter the next level, which would be this one, but it'd be starting over here. Then the door would close behind them, we could delete this one, begin generating the next one, and so forth. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and click subscribe so you can make sure to see that when that comes out. Also, if you enjoyed this, let me know. If you didn't enjoy it, also let me know. Feel free to leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Any comments you may have, I'll be happy to address them or talk to you. Reach out to me. Anyways, with that, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.